Welcome back to another episode of Tea After Midnight. Tonight's episode's gonna look a little bit different. I'm collaborating with a sweet friend of mine who is a criminologist. Her name is Brooke, and she talks about true crime cases here on TikTok. So tonight, she's going to be reading one of the stories that you guys sent to me, and I'm going to be talking about a true crime case that she told me about. I highly recommend you go over there after this video and listen to that story because it's a good one. So with that being said, grab your favorite tea and settle in, and let me tell you about Elisa Lam. Let's start off by talking about who Miss Elisa Lam was. She was a 21-year-old college student from Vancouver, Canada, solo traveling to visit California in 2013. Elisa checked into the notorious Cecil Hotel located in downtown Los Angeles. As I'm sure most of you know, the Cecil Hotel has been known to have their fair share of criminals and even serial killers stay within their walls, which really only adds to the mystery of what happened to Elisa Lam. Elisa was last seen on the hotel's elevator camera footage on January 31st, 2013. I'm going to insert a portion of the video footage here so you can see why this footage became viral. And as you can see, it appears by Elisa's body language that she seems to be frightened by something. You can also see her pressing multiple buttons on the elevator as well as peering in and out of the elevator quickly, almost as if she was scared of something or someone out there. So when this footage was released by the LAPD, it was spread everywhere and everyone had an opinion or a theory as to what happened to Elisa. So a few of these theories included paranormal activity, that someone was following or in pursuit of her, the hotel being haunted, or even a mental health crisis. So many of these theories came to light because of the hotel's dark past, which, like I said, included death, crime, and even serial killer connections, which really only amplified the mystery of what happened to her. So several weeks after her disappearance, there were several hotel guest complaints about the low water pressure and the strange tasting and discoloration to the water. A maintenance worker was sent to the hotel's roof to check the water tanks. And on February 19th, 2013, that's when they discovered Elisa Lam's body in one of the water tanks with her clothes not on her body, but instead floating next to her. And when the discovery was made known to the public, that's when the mystery intensified and everyone had questions. How did she get to the rooftop? How did she get into the water tank? And whether or not somebody else was involved. So ultimately, her death was ruled an accidental drowning with bipolar disorder listed as a significant factor. Elisa was diagnosed with bipolar disorder and she was prescribed several medications including antidepressants, antipsychotics, as well as mood stabilizers. And it was noted in the toxicology report that at the time of her death, she did have traces of some, if not all, of her medication in her system, but it was lower than the amount that she was prescribed, which in turn could mean that she was under-medicating, which could have led to a psychotic or manic episode. Investigators found no evidence of physical assault or trauma to her body, and there was no clear evidence of another person being involved. And if I'm not mistaken, there were 3 fire escapes and 1 stairwell that led to the roof of the hotel that could have possibly been used to gain access to the roof where the water tanks were located. And there were also ladders up there that could have been used to get on top of the water tanks, which could explain how she got up there in the first place. But honestly, my mind keeps going back to this camera footage that was released of her in the elevator and how the doors remained open for a longer duration of time than honestly you would expect. And I know she hit random buttons on the elevator, so it could explain why the door stayed open longer than you would expect. But how her demeanor was, on top of that, the hand movements and the arm movements that she was making, and also the peeking into the hallway, almost as if something was out there trying to get to her and she was trying to see where it was. It just gives me an eerie feeling. But you guys in the comments let me know what your thoughts are on this case and what you think happened to her in that elevator. And be sure to go check out Brooke's page where she reads the scary story that one of you guys sent. And I'll also be reading that story here on my page next week. But that does conclude this episode of Tea After Midnight. If you have any personal stories, paranormal or otherwise, that you'd like to send, I would love to read them. You can email me at the email on the screen or the email in the caption of this video. But as always, you guys, Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for 900K. We just hit 900K before I started filming, and my heart is beyond full. So, thank you so much for being here. You mean the world to me. I hope you have the best night. I love you, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye.
What you looking at? Just kidding, snacks in hand. The vibe is set. And once I start, don't eat too much because you gotta stay fine. But come on, bestie, yes, it is. Hi, bestie boo. I missed you so much. What you doing? You want to go get your snack? You want to go get your gardening essentials? Oh, okay. I just posted another YouTube compilation, so if you want my stories in long form, go over to my YouTube channel. Don't watch nobody else's because they're making money off of me. So, for the sake of the story, let's call this guy Pedro. Now, Pedro is 16 years old, right? But Pedro came to the United States when he was 11 years old. And he only came because back where he's from, which is Venezuela, his parents ended up passing away. Like, both of his parents passed away. And so he kind of like didn't have any family left. And so his aunt ended up filing for him, and now he's here. So now he's living with his aunt and her husband. Except his aunt is taking care of him, yes. His aunt is feeding him, yes. However, to the aunt, he feels like a burden, you know? Ever since he got there, like, they were warm and welcoming for like the first month, but then when like the bills and everything started to add up, he started to feel like a burden. And so his aunt would like feed her children first, and if there was any leftovers, he could get some. They were so much more stricter on him than they were with their own kids. And it's important to note that his aunt is his mom's sister, but they never really got along. It's important to also know that Pedro came here under temporary protected status. So he doesn't really have a green card or like a citizenship, but he's here legally. Anyway, he came when he was 11. He's now 16 years old. He has 2 more years to be an adult to endure what he's enduring. It's not like they're like physically abusing him, but mentally, they're definitely abusing the fuck out of him. And so now, unfortunately, Pedro is like severely depressed, and to the point where he doesn't really want to be in this world anymore. And when he tried to voice that to his I don't want to call them parents because they're horrible people. They just accused him of looking for attention. So even with like his depression, they're like dismissing it. And they're telling him like, what the hell do you have to be depressed about? Like, you have a roof over your head, we feed you, you just looking for a reason. You looking for attention. Anyway, so a little bit earlier this year, Pedro finally found him a little job at the mall. He was so happy about it, and he was finally, like, he was so happy to go tell them that he found a job, because now he can stop relying on on them for things like food, money, clothes, and stuff like that. And he thought that they would be so happy for him that he found a job, because they already be acting like he be asking for too much. But poor baby don't know, when you're making moves like that, well, then again, it's like he's living under their roof, so he probably had to tell them eventually. Anyway, he expected them to be happy. And they did say that they were happy for him. Except when he told them he found a job, now they tell him they expect money from him. Which was cool at first. Like, he really didn't mind, like, you know, giving them some of his paycheck. I mean, he's living there. Except they wanted his entire paycheck, and then they would then decide what to give him from his own freaking paycheck, which sounds insane. So, of course, he's like, I don't want to give y'all my paycheck. Like, no, I'm going to work hard, and this is my money. You guys complain about feeding me. You don't have to worry about that. I can feed myself now. He's like low-key trying to stand up for himself. And of course, they call it disrespect. And they tell him he's just trying to be grown. And since you want to be grown, you can get the fuck out. So they kicked him out. When they kicked him out, they fully expected him to just like be like, oh my gosh, please no, like, I'm begging you, please let me stay. But at that point, Pedro was so fed up that he would rather be homeless than be living with them. At least he has a job now, and he gets to keep his whole paycheck. Anyway, so they kick him out, he leaves, and he's homeless for about like 2 weeks, like literally sleeping at the park next to his job. But his job don't know, like, he did it very smart. He didn't have a car, but I don't want to give out all the details because I don't want people to recognize who he is. He was still able to show up to work clean. He found his way around. And at this point, he's just saving up to get himself a nice little beat down car that he could probably just sleep in until he could like save some more, you know. Anyway, Pedro finds comfort in my scary stories, and it really freaking touched my heart when he said, like, there were nights where he was, like, homeless and crying, and, like, my stories would come up. I'm sorry. Basically, like, my stories would make him feel better. I'm only tearing up because I've been there. I've been homeless, sleeping in my car. So nice to know that my stories, like, gave somebody that was going through the same some comfort. I gotta get myself together. Whew, okay, anyway, so finally gets his first paycheck, and the first thing he does with his paycheck is purchase my book because he really believed that my ebook could possibly change his life. So he got the ebook, but unfortunately, he couldn't purchase some of the things on the ebook. The most that he could do is the fast, which is the most powerful thing in the book. Yes, there's other things, but me personally, the fast is the most powerful thing in the book. So he does the fast, not like he was eating that well anyway. He purchased himself a Bible and a notebook and a pen, and he did that fast. He does the fast, and about a week after he does the fast, of course, he has a very interesting dream. He has a dream that in the park that he'd been sleeping in, he was in that park, but his ankles were tied up and his hands were tied up, and he was being taken away. He could not see who was taking him away, but he was being taken away. So when he woke up from that dream, immediately his gut is telling him, leave the park. Find a new place to be. Leave the park. And he immediately listens to his guts. He leaves the park. He decides to go. There is a park by the school he was going to at the time, which he's not going to anymore because he's now like homeless. He was too embarrassed to go to school. Obviously, he didn't go there during the day either. He would go there at nighttime where nobody could see him. Should also note that the aunt and her husband still are holding his information as far as like his status, like his I-95, like all the proper, they have that. They didn't provide it to him when he was leaving. Technically, he's a minor, so they have the right to keep it because they're the guardian. Anyway, one night as he's sleeping, at that park, somebody wakes him up. And when he looks up, it's one of his old teachers, one of his favorite teachers, actually. And the teacher was just looking at him with such sadness, like, what are you doing here? Come to find out, the teacher was grading papers and ended up napping, because the teacher was so tired. She ended up taking a nap and woke up like mad late, like, oh shoot, let me go home. She was the only one left at the school. That's how she found him. She was driving away and saw him sleeping at the park. And so the teacher's asking him questions like, where's your guardians? Like, why are you at the park? And he kind of explained the entire situation to the teacher. Again, that was his favorite teacher. And so before, he used to like low-key vent to her without completely telling his business. And so the teacher, complete angel, believed him and was like, hey, come to my house. Let's go. We're going to my house. And tomorrow we're going to settle all of this. Tomorrow, she indeed called out from school to help him figure out like what this is, like what they're going to do. She was going to take him to like a caseworker or the police. Like she was also going to file a police report. And so she's asking him questions. She was like, what park were you sleeping in before? Take me there. So they get in the car and, he takes her there. When they get there, they see ICE officers there looking for somebody. The teacher, being curious, went to talk to the ICE officers. Something in her guts was like, let me go talk to them. And upon talking to them, come to find out, the aunt called them on him. If you guys don't know, a lot of people with the TPS holders has been, fighting for their lives lately because especially Venezuelans. So upon finding this out, the teacher didn't even tell them that he was in the car with her. She was just like, oh, okay, well, I'm his teacher. When I get in touch with him, I will let you guys know. At that point, she herself now know how evil these people are. So it's not just his words anymore. These ICE officers, literally, they weren't supposed to either. Basically, she called them and reported him as an illegal runaway who's very angry at the world. The teacher was like absolutely disgusted. At this point, she didn't even want to take him to like a caseworker or anything like that because she already knows how they come in. The situation is very sensitive and she would hate for him to get deported knowing he don't got no parents. He don't got nobody else to go back to. That's why he came here in the first place. So the teacher immediately got a lawyer. Almost time's up. So I'm going to try to cut it short. He's currently living with the teacher. He's eating good. He's getting treated nicely. and he just wanted to send me the story. The story is still unraveling. Hopefully they win. Hopefully he finally gets his peace. Please comment some words of encouragement for him. He also feels bad because his teacher kind of like her job is on the line too because of how she's helping him. He was thanking me so much because had it not been for the fast and that dream that he had, and he stayed at that park, those ICE officers would have found him. Only have 5 seconds, so don't forget to get your book, and I love you. Bye.
A girl saw a man standing outside of her bedroom door, but nobody else could see him. If you're new here, I'm Krista, and on my account I tell spooky stories either submitted to me or found on the internet. This happened years ago when we lived in an apartment where weird things were always happening. One night, after one of my birthday parties, a bunch of older kids were telling scary stories to everyone else. One of them kept talking about a man dressed all in black with a hat. My sister was still young at the time, so it really got to her. Later that night, one of her friends slept over in her room. Her friend fell asleep pretty quickly, but my sister was still awake. Her door was slightly open. At some point, she looked toward the door and saw someone standing there. She said it was a really tall man, dressed completely in black, just standing in the doorway. And then she said it looked like he was getting closer. She woke her friend up and asked if she saw it too, but her friend didn't see anything. After that, my sister shut her eyes and didn't open them again until morning. He was gone. But that wasn't the only thing that happened in that apartment. Another time, during a cookout at our place, one of the bedroom doors got stuck and had to be opened with a knife. After that, everyone knew it wasn't locked. Later on, the door was closed again. At some point, someone knocked on it, and something knocked back. From the inside. Everyone just stood there, not really knowing what to do. Then the knocking turned into banging, loud, like something was trying to get out. But when the door was finally opened, nothing was there. After that, we started noticing other small things too. One time we had a sheet hanging in the hallway instead of a door, and it moved like someone walked behind it. We thought it was one of us, but everyone was in the living room. Eventually, we had someone come and pray over the apartment. Things calmed down after that. But I still think about that man my sister saw because she never changed her story. I think in the middle of the night, it's definitely easy to hallucinate things, especially if you're in a state of delirium right after you wake up. But the fact that something else happened in that apartment, multiple things happened, that knocking is so terrifying. And I would not be surprised if that and the shadow figure were somehow related. Thank you so much for submitting this story. If you guys have any stories you'd like me to read, please email them to me and I will get to them if I can. And I will see you in the next one.
Today's story was sent to us by someone who said that we could call her Charlie, and Charlie said that she used to really enjoy exploring old and abandoned graveyards. She said that it was quiet, there was never anyone else around, it was just really nice. She said she did not do this from a paranormal perspective, she really didn't even believe in those things. She did it from a history-focused perspective, and she said when she would go into these graveyards, she actually wouldn't even take photos of the headstones, she would take actual impressions, like etchings of them. She said she did this because it made her feel like she was holding a piece of history, and then she would take those etchings, she would research these people, and she said that that would then give her a glimpse into the way of life in those time periods versus just big historical broad spectrum coverage. When Charlie is 27 years old, she goes on a camping trip with her best friend Rachel, and while they are camping, they meet these two van life girls, and they end up becoming pretty close with them. They're only there for 2 more days. The van life girls are going to be there for another week, but they do end up hanging out for the 2 days that Rachel and Charlie are at this campground, and they end up kind of becoming close, and they start talking about what their interests are. Turns out van life girls are also into exploring old graveyards. Charlie's like, oh my gosh, me too. They ask her, did you see the one a few miles up the road on the way in? Charlie says, no, I didn't. Can you give me the location? Because I'd love to check it out on my way out. So they set her up with a location, let her know where it is and how to get there. They said they had actually stopped on the way in, but only for a few minutes because they didn't have much time. They were going to hit it on their way back out. They exchange numbers. Charlie tells them, I'll let you know how it is. Comes time to leave. Now, Charlie is not really into the paranormal, but her friend Rachel does believe in it. Except she's not into exploring it. She's terrified of it. So she really doesn't want to stop at this graveyard because she's just sure that it is haunted. Charlie is like, I do this all the time. I promise you, everything's going to be fine. So Rachel reluctantly agrees to go into this graveyard with Charlie. They follow the directions that the van girls had given them specifically, and yeah, there it is. Right there, they end up at this graveyard. Charlie is into it, Rachel reluctantly gets out, but they walk through this graveyard, and Charlie says that she has been in a lot of old and abandoned graveyards, but this one was in the worst shape that she has ever seen. Comparatively speaking to the other ones that she had been in, which you could tell people did frequent, she just never ran into anybody there because they would still prop up the headstones and kind of pull brush and just make it a little more inviting. However, this one, nobody was taking care care of this place. It seemed trees had grown up everywhere. The headstones were all fallen over. It was just a mess. As they walk a little further into the woods, Charlie notices that there does look like there is one grave that has been somewhat maintained. She walks over to it, she kneels down, and in her mind, she reads the headstone, and it says Elias Boone. She says, that is not the name that was on the headstone. I made that up. But it says Elias Boone. And then below it are these weird markings. It looks like a circle with antlers coming out of it. Charlie bends down because she wants to make an impression of this headstone. It's unlike anything she's ever seen before while exploring these old graveyards. And Rachel is standing behind her. And as she's down, about to take this etching, she hears Rachel say, Charlie. Charlie stands up and looks to where Rachel is looking, and she sees an old man coming through the woods. She said that he looks to be late 80s, maybe even late 90s. He is just walking with a walking stick, kind of having a hard time getting around. Clothes look old. But Rachel's scared, and she can tell Rachel's scared because she thinks we're seeing a ghost right now, but I see this, and this is not paranormal. This is just a man walking through the woods. So she puts her hand on Rachel. She's like, it's okay, I see him too. It's not a ghost. So she says, she yells to the man, hello, sir. I am so sorry if we are trespassing. We'll get our stuff and we'll get out of here. The man is slowly walking to them through these trees, and as he gets closer, he says, did you speak the name written on the stone? Charlie says that for some reason she knows that this man is talking about the stone behind her that says the name on it with the weird symbols, and she says, I did not. I just read in my head, why? Why would that matter? And she says that the old man just looks at them and tells them, shh, do not speak to him. Do not speak in front of him. Don't. At this point, Charlie's just packing her stuff up. She's going to get out of there. She's like kind of eye rolling. She's like, oh, here we go. Crazy old man. Awesome. But Rachel, super into it. She wants to know what's going on. She wants the whole story. The old man tells them, I'll tell you. I will tell you this because at this point, you're already involved because you're already here. You've already seen it. You're already involved. I'll tell you, but I will not tell you here. Let's get you back to your car or whatever it is that you came from. But yeah, no, I don't talk in front of him. They gather their things and they start to exit. Charlie once again says to the man, listen, I'm really sorry if we were trespassing. Like, I do apologize. I'm not trying to be disrespectful. The man ends up telling them that, yeah, this is, my land. I have tried to maintain the graveyard, but as you can see, I'm getting older. So I haven't really been that great with upkeep, but I've done the best that I can. Charlie says, yeah, except for that one. That one look good. The old man tells them, yeah, well, I got to keep the protections in place. So Charlie is kind of over it at this point, just kind of ready to go. She's never had any sort of paranormal experience in a graveyard. She's been going there for years. But Rachel's super into the paranormal. She wants to know what the heck is going on. Since they are far enough away from this grave, this man goes on to tell them the story of Elias Boone, the man supposedly buried underneath his headstone. He told them, legend has it that back in the 1800s, a man named Elias Boone came into the town. He kind of appeared out of nowhere. He didn't really have a backstory, no family, no distinguishing features, just kind of poof, he was there. But the people of the town really liked Elias. He was charismatic. He was very trustworthy. Everybody liked Elias. So the fact that he had no family, no backstory, no nothing, oh well, nobody really cared. He didn't make waves. He didn't hurt anybody. Elias lives in this town for 20 years, and after those 20 years, people start to notice some strange things about Elias. Mostly the fact that Elias never aged. There was never a wrinkle. He still looked exactly the same 20 years after he showed up. And people in the town were aging as they normally would, but time never seemed to touch Elias. They don't really think much of it. It's weird, but hey, good genetics, God's favorite, who knows? Until one day when an old man is passing through town and he has an encounter with Elias Boone. Except he doesn't call him Elias, he calls him by a different name. Now this isn't public, so the townspeople do see this interaction between Elias and this man who is passing through town, and this man basically tells him, I have not seen in 40 years, and yet you have not changed, you haven't aged. And you are this man. Elias very nervously tells him, I am not who you think that I am. I'm so sorry, but that's not me. And the older man ends up telling him, you walk like him. You talk like him. You look just like him. I know that you're him. Elias once again tells this older man, I am not who you think that I am. I'm sorry, but that's not me. Old man basically calls Elias out and is like, I always knew there was something off about you. But he just leaves it at that and leaves. Now, this interaction, coupled with the fact that the townspeople are not seeing time take any toll on Elias, start to become very distrustful of him. No matter his charisma, no matter how kind he was, no matter how trustworthy he seemed. A town that used to love Elias, almost as if it was magnetic and magic, turned on him. They weren't cruel, they didn't kick him out, they just distanced themselves. They began to withhold this love and this trust and this admiration that they had once given Elias. After the townspeople do this, they begin to notice that Elias doesn't age, but he begins to fade. He becomes very thin. His skin doesn't wrinkle and it doesn't crack. It just becomes gray, like the color had been drained out of it. As the townspeople see this, they actually begin to feel bad because they're thinking, this is just a mortal man and now he's sick and now we have treated him so terribly. And they are about to forgive Elias, welcome him back into the fold, give him their trust and their admiration and all of that back once he, they see that, okay, he's just a normal guy. Until there is a girl in the town who had gone missing, and reports stated that the last person she was seen alive with was Elias Boone. Townspeople go to Elias Boone, who they had just seen a couple days prior in town, who had looked terrible, and turns out he's completely back to normal. He's put the weight back on, his skin is colored again. After seeing this, the townspeople automatically blame Elias for this girl's unaliving or disappearance, thinking that somehow Elias has this magic that allows him to feed off of people in one way or the other, and if he can't get it through love and admiration, he'll just get it some other way. This basically turns into a witch hunt, okay? It is said that after the people in the town turn on Elias, Elias becomes very angry and ends up just letting it all out. He tells them, I am the thing that you fear. There is nothing that you can do to me. I will always be here. I have always been here. Honestly, sounds awful. And in the town ends up telling Elias, I may not be able to unalive you or do anything to you, but I can trap you. So apparently the townspeople wrap Elias in chains, throw him in a coffin, bury him as deep as they can, mark his grave with this headstone, and then put his name and some protective markings. Years following Elias being put in this coffin and buried and wrapped in chains, people would visit his grave, mostly as generations went on and the story became muddied and people just looked at it as a legend or something that wasn't real. Now, this wasn't long after his death, but it wasn't hundreds of years. But they would visit his grave, they would speak his name, they would talk to him, and it was said that they would hear voices, hear things moving beneath the ground. And after they would visit the grave, they would feel drained as if their energy had been taken from them. Finally concluded that Elias is still alive down there, obviously, and when people speak his name or come to his grave, he is feeding off of their energy. He's feeding off of anything that they will give him until he is strong enough to break those bonds and escape from where he is. The old man tells Charlie and Rachel, you cannot speak his name, you can't talk about this, you can't talk about this place, you can't tell people to come here. Because if Elias gets out, I don't know. After this man tells him the story, Charlie, who says she's never had a paranormal experience in her life, does start to hear whispers inside of that graveyard. We get back to their car, the old man looks at them one last time and just says, just remember, if you do talk about this place, don't say his name. Charlie said she got in her car and she got out of there as fast as she possibly could. In the email, Charlie wrote that she doesn't know if there was something paranormal to this, if it's just a local legend to keep away outsiders. The energy of that place and the whispers that she heard, it just felt nefarious and it's not something that she wants to play with. She doesn't know what or who Elias Boone was, but she don't want him coming back.
It's time for another spooky story. I am Autumn in Appalachia. Send me your spooky stories, add me on Facebook, and subscribe on YouTube. Same handle. Without further ado. This story comes from Mia. She will be tagged in this video. You guys buckle up. This one gave me goosebumps. Mia said she has grown up in the Appalachians of Vermont her entire life, and she has seen some shit in her day, but this particular experience rattled her to the core. She said that one day in mid-July, she and another foster kid in the foster home that she lived in were followed home by a flesh pedestrian. So like I mentioned, Mia said that she grew up in foster care. She was in Lowell, Vermont, and she said that this particular day, the foster parents are at work, the smaller foster kids are in summer school, or like a summer camp, and she and one other foster kid are just hanging out. They decide they are going to go to this place a few miles down the road. It's called Cajun Snack Bar to get some ice cream, and they're walking. So they make their way to the snack bar, they get their ice cream, and around back of this location is a single picnic table. They decide to go back there, eat their ice cream, and where this picnic table is, there's a little trail, and if you go up the trail, it leads you to this like beautiful aerial view of the Appalachians, and it's on the side of a cliff. So they go up there after they're done with the ice cream to take some pictures. As they are up there around this cliff taking pictures, Mia said that this cliff is kind of curved, and I assume there's like a guardrail surrounding it. But she said it is way too steep for any animal or man to be able to climb up or down. And as they are taking the pictures, they start hearing something big climbing up the side of this cliff. Immediately, her stomach drops. She says something just felt off to her. She looks at her foster friend and is like, we need to get out of here. I have a bad feeling feeling. So they begin their few-mile walk back home, and as they begin their walk back home, they hear whatever this thing is following them, but it is in the tree line beside where they're walking, and it's just out of sight. So they book it, they get back to the house. They even, on the rest of the walk back, decided to cross the street to get away from the tree line to maybe try to lessen their anxiety. So they make it back home safely, but later that night, after dark, Mia and her friend decide to sneak back out to go meet some friends in their school parking lot to get a vape. Now, the school is like halfway in between the foster house and the snack bar, so they're walking the same direction. They get there, they get the vape, and as they're standing there conversing, there's a field right beside the school. They hear this blood-curdling scream, super loud, coming from this field. Mia said that immediately she just gets the feeling that whatever had been following them earlier that day was the same thing that just screamed at them. So meeting over, they decide to book it back to the foster home because they're shaken up at this point. It's like after dark. They get back, they make sure all the doors, the windows are locked. The younger kids at this point are home and they're asleep, and the foster parents are at home and they are asleep in their rooms. So they, after checking everything is locked, turn the lights off downstairs, and they go up to the top of the stairs where her foster friend's bedroom is, and they go in there to hang out. Now, after they've hung out for a while, Mia had to charge her phone, so she leaves the room to go get her phone charger across the hall, and she passes the staircase on her way. Now, when she looks over at the staircase, she notices all the lights are on downstairs. And at first, she doesn't think this is weird because sometimes the younger kids would wake up for a snack and then forget and leave the lights on. So she grabs her charger, she goes downstairs, she double checks, doesn't see anybody down there, turns the lights back off, everything is locked up still. She goes back upstairs and into her friend's room. Now, 30 minutes or so later, for one reason or another, she has to leave the bedroom again. When she does, and she passes the staircase once again, for the second time, all the lights are on. Every single light downstairs is on. Now, at this point, they're kind of freaked out. And so they start checking rooms. They're making sure everybody's accounted for. All the kids are in the bed. The foster parents are in their bed. Like, nobody is unaccounted for. They go back downstairs. They double check the doors, the windows. It just doesn't make sense, right? And they start getting this really bad feeling of dread. They actually grab some salt as they are turning the lights off, and they are like salting the stairs on their way back up. They decide, they're braver than me, to sit at the top of the stairs in the dark to wait and see if the lights come on again. After about 10 minutes of sitting there in the complete darkness and the complete quiet, they one by one slowly start seeing the downstairs lights come on again. And the lights coming on are like getting closer and closer to the staircase until finally something flips the light on the staircase. And when it does, it causes a shadow to be cast across the wall. She said that it was a long bony arm with unnaturally long fingers, and that the elbow on this thing was like very bulky, and that it was moving almost animatronically. It was not fluid, natural kind of movement like a human would make. They are absolutely panicking. She said that when she saw this, all the hairs on her neck stood up, and that they are both like trying to hold in a scream. She said that they are slowly backing up, trying to get back to the bedroom, when this thing lets off the most blood-curdling, inhuman scream she's ever heard. She doesn't even know how to put it into words, like how it sounded. It just did not sound like any human or animal she'd ever heard. And she said that this thing rips open the locked door. They hear it rip open the locked door, and it busts through the garage and is like knocking things over. They are terrified at this point. Like, literally, they have no words. It took like the breath out of them, and before they can even, like tell their foster parent or anything, they woke up because they heard the commotion, they heard the scream. And now, at first, when the foster parent heard this whole commotion and saw everything knocked over in the garage, when they got downstairs, they turned to blame Mia and her foster sibling, but just looking at their faces told her all that she needed to know. She said without them even explaining anything, her foster parent knew that it was not them, and that they saw something that really shook them up. To this day, she does not know how that thing was so powerful that it managed to literally like rip open a locked door. When they checked the door afterward, the lock was still locked. and she doesn't know how it got in because all the windows and doors were locked up tight. She's not even sure what exactly it was. She theorizes that it was a flesh pedestrian. I'm not going to say the real name. I'm not trying to invite no bad juju. But yeah, you guys let me know what you think. I've also heard that flesh pedestrians are exclusive to areas in the United States where there's like Native American history and folklore. And then I've heard otherwise. Just know that if I saw some shit like that, y'all may as well air fry me. Air fry me, cremate me, do something, because I could not live with myself after that. That is so freaking creepy. Y'all send me your spooky stories and stay tuned for the next one.
This is called The Goodbye I Never Said. Back when I was in secondary school, I was really close with a girl I'll call Nikki. We became fast friends after a summer of creating new memories together, and by the time we were about to start grade 10, we were inseparable. During one sleepover, we made a pact. Once school started, every Friday night would be ours. We decided to make our own Ouija board.
Oh.
As the rest of the house settled into sleep, we quietly gathered everything we thought we'd need to carry out our idea. On the board, we wrote all the letters of the alphabet, the numbers 0 to 9, and yes and no and goodbye, the essential tools for communication. When we finally finished, we sat back, oddly proud of ourselves and the imagination it had taken to piece it together, neither of us truly believing that it would work. After dimming the lights so that the flame of the candles would be the only thing lighting up the space around us, we started to play. We placed our fingers on the planchette and invited anyone who might come through to speak with us. When it moved, we froze. I glanced at Nikki. You're moving it. She shook her head. No, I'm not, I swear. We asked quietly who it was we were speaking to. We asked whether we were speaking to a man or a woman. The board spelled out boy, giving the impression that he was young. When we asked how old he was, the planchette drifted to the numbers, confirming our suspicions. He said he was sad and missed his family. Nikki asked how he died. The planchette moved again, spelling out a single word. Here. I lifted my fingers from the planchette in disbelief. After a moment, I placed them down and asked if the little boy could see us. The planchette slid across the board. Yes. Then I did something I shouldn't have. I asked where he was. The response came immediately. Behind you. Can you describe your surroundings? The words appeared. Dark, cold, help. The last thing I remember was staring down at the board, feeling an unbearable pressure on my shoulders, like the air had turned heavy and thick. As I looked down, the planchette jerked across the board, spelling 3 letters. P-O-S. Nikki yanked my hands away from the board and slammed the planchette to goodbye. I looked up at her. Did you see that? She whispered. See what? I asked. What he was spelling out? I shook my head. No. Possession. That was the word he'd been spelling, possession. You don't remember? Nikki's voice trembled. I shook my head again, panicked. My chest tightened. My mind raced with thoughts that I couldn't control. She reached over, wrapping me in a hug. We blew out the candles surrounding the Ouija board, plunging the room into darkness. That night, sleep never came. As the sun finally crept through the blinds and the birds began to chirp outside, I felt an overwhelming sense of relief. They say babies and animals can sense things that adults can't, and after what happened next, I don't just believe that saying. I know it. Daylight came, Doug comes into the room.
Right.
He went straight to the Ouija board lying on the floor, sniffed it once, froze. A low growl rumbled from his chest. I turned my head toward Nikki, and by the look on her face, she saw a weird look in his eyes. I saw it too. He began jumping on and off my bed, barking relentlessly, pacing and snapping his head back. It wasn't curiosity, it was more like a warning. Without thinking, I grabbed the board and planchette and carried them out of my room. I shoved them to the back corner of the cabinet, out of sight, and closed the door. That was the last time I ever saw our project. As I write this now, rereading everything that happened that night, I realised it's something I hadn't allowed myself to think before. One of the most important rules we'd read, the one about always saying goodbye, I didn't actually follow it. When Nikki ripped my hands from the board and slid the planchette to goodbye, my fingers were no longer touching it. I never properly ended the session. I've replayed that night in my head more times than I can count. 7 years have passed since that night, but the feeling hasn't ever really left. To this day, when I'm home alone and the house feels silent, I still feel it. That subtle awareness, that prickle at the back of my neck that tells me I'm not truly alone. I feel watched, not constantly, but deliberately, as if something moves when I do. I believe that whoever or whatever was there that night didn't stop when we ended the game. I believe it found a way through. That in those few moments when the hands were still on the board and my guard was down, something attached itself to me. Watching, listening, learning. And now, thinking back, I realise perhaps it was something far more sinister. A dark entity, patient and cunning, taking the form of someone who seemed familiar enough during the game to lure me in. Just having the thought that makes me sick to my stomach, but I can't deny it. I know that it's still here, waiting for me to let my guard down so that it can finally take what it stayed for.
I got a few minutes, so hopefully I can share this story in just a few minutes. I'm going to talk about the time that I went to Thailand and I guess we could say it was a paranormal experience. I'll let you guys tell me what you think. I was 15 and I did not want to go to Thailand. It was of no interest to me to go to Thailand at 15. We were also going in the middle of July. That is one of the worst times to go to Thailand. It is hot, it is humid, it is unforgiving. But I didn't have a say in the family vacation, so I had to go. I had to go. And you're like, oh, that sounds really privileged. You got to go on a vacation. I'd rather have stayed home. Thank you so much. When we get there, this was at a time where the people were mad at the government and there was an explosion at a mall. There was a bomb at a mall that went off. And we were in our taxi from the airport in Bangkok driving to our hotel. We passed by this mall and it, like, a part of it was gone. It exploded. And I was like, all right, we're already here. Full steam ahead. And the hotel was nice. One thing about Thailand, you can get a beautiful 5-star hotel for like 2-star prices. There was an omelet bar, a chef who made your omelets in the morning. That was the best part of the whole trip. Was that. We did the floating market. That was cool. The temples, hang on, excuse me. It's really dry here today. The temples were gorgeous. The little glass temples that had like little square mirrors all over them. Stunning, beautiful. The animals made me sad. The people made me sad. And where we were, the ground was dirt and everything was sad. It was just sad, dude. I'm not a Thailand girly. Now, one of those nights on our 2-week stay, my stepdad was like, oh, let's go to the night market. It's like a flea market at night. But the weather was getting to my mom. She wasn't feeling good. She stayed at the hotel. She's like, you guys go. It was my stepfather at the time, my sister and I going to the night market. And I was like, all right, let's go check out some trinkets. We're walking through the night market and there's this guy who's holding a sign that's like, oh, ladies drink free or whatever, some like club promotion. And I saw it and he saw it and I was like, I'm underage, no thank you. And he flips the sign around, it says, we don't card. And then I got the ick. I was like, ah, and I walked a little bit faster. My stepfather then goes, okay, we're gonna head back to the hotel, but he decided, like, instead of taking a taxi back, we're gonna walk our way back. We're gonna walk our way back in Thailand at night. A place we'd never been before. And I was like, that's not a good idea. And he was like, no, it's fine. Like, I know where we're going. No, you don't know where you're fucking going. You've never been here before. Anyway, we leave the night market. We're walking down this really weird little street. We took a left into an even weirder, tinier little street. And I started getting that feeling like this doesn't feel safe. And as I look up, I look in front of me. There's like this black figure, like 50 feet away. My sister doesn't see it. My stepdad doesn't see it. They're looking forward. They're talking to each other. I'm hanging back and I'm like, what the fuck is that? And I'm looking. And as I'm looking at it, its neck collapses like at an inhuman angle to the side and its arm stretches down. And that's when I go, oh no. My stepdad goes, what? I go, that. And I was like, that. He looks up. He doesn't see it. I look at my sister. I look up. It's not there. There's nothing. It's in my own fucking mind. I must be crazy, right? And my stepdad goes, okay, well, you know what? Let's head back to the market and we will grab that taxi because I'm not really sure where we're going. And I was like, thank fucking God you came to your goddamn senses. We get into the taxi. We go back to the hotel. We get into the hotel and my mom is like uncomfortable. And I hear her talking to my stepdad. And she goes, yeah, I had a nightmare while you guys were gone. And my stepdad's like, oh, that's okay. It's just a dream. You know, it's fine. And she goes, no, it felt real. And she, in her nightmare, described a figure that looked exactly like what I saw in the alley. But that this figure started running at her. And she woke up. That's weird. Let's chop that off as a coincidence. a really fucking weird one. And let's tell one more story before I go. Still in Thailand. This was one of our last days, and my stepdad decided we're gonna go to this restaurant in the middle of fucking nowhere. I don't know what this place was called. I could never find it again, even if I tried. We're at this really old Thai restaurant. It is falling apart. Parts of the roof are gone. Gone. Where'd it go? I don't know. We're sitting down, and I can't eat Thai food. Everything just was like flavor blasted with coconut. To this day I can't eat coconut, and extremely spicy, like the kind of spicy that hurts you. Doesn't even taste good, not even flavorful. So my mouth was being assaulted with spice and coconut. And while I'm sitting there eating my food, or trying to, I look up, and along the wall where the wall is not attached to the ceiling was a rat walking across, doing a little tightrope show for us. And I was like, you know what, I'm gonna go to the bathroom. I'm gonna excuse myself, I'm gonna go to the bathroom. Like, I'm gonna go wash my hands, and I can't deal. So I get up, I excuse myself to go to the bathroom. It is a single bathroom, just one toilet, one window, one sink. Thank God there was a window, because the lights weren't working. Like, I closed the door, I locked it, the lights weren't working. And I was like, all right, that's fine, whatever, I can see enough. So I use the restroom, and as I'm sitting there thinking, oh my God, I've touched everything now, I get up, flush the toilet, go to the sink, and I wash my hands. And I'm looking down at my hands. I look up in the mirror, and that's when I saw it. I look up in the mirror, and I see this woman's face right here. And she had long dark hair. She was wearing white. I could only see like from here up. She was wearing white, and it was all dirty, like brown stained. And it was in a second flash like that. I look behind me, there's nothing there. I look back in the mirror, there's nothing there. To this day, when I close my eyes, I can still see her face, and her mouth was wide open. She was staring at me in the mirror with her mouth wide open. And then she was gone. And I don't even dry my hands. I unlock the door. I leave the bathroom. I sit down. I'm white as a ghost. My family goes, what was it? I go, nothing. At this point, who fucking cares what I've been seeing? No one's gonna believe me anyway. I know what I saw. I know what I saw in that fucking bathroom in Nowhereville, Thailand. That's it. I have no... That's it.
We're on a roll here because I've got another really good one for you right out of the Appalachian Mountains. North Carolina this time, and stick around for the ending because it is so bizarre. So the person telling this story lives down in the North Carolina hills. On one particular night, they described the evening air as being heavier and more humid than normal. So they're just sitting there on their front porch, watching and waiting for a friend's truck to come through that mountain fog. Now, if you've been in the woods a time or two, you know that the silence isn't ever really silent, especially at night. There's always crickets and cicadas and a million other things. Definitely a living, breathing entity all in its own. Well, he says that as he was sitting there, all of a sudden, everything stopped. Like not even the slightest buzz of a cricket. And again, if you know anything about the outdoors, you know that when that silence strikes, it means something is out there. So he says, as he's peering out, the shadows across the road started to shift. And at first they're just assuming it's something that's typical for the area, maybe a deer or a stray dog. But as whatever this was walked into the glow of the streetlight, their heart dropped. They described this thing as having like a combination of the frame of a wolf, but the build of a heavyweight fighter. This thing was covered in heavy muscle. It looked like its legs could kick down a barn door. Its fur was dark black, thick and matted. And the way it moved was very deliberate and calculated, almost as though it were prowling. And yeah, it was on two legs. So it reaches the stop sign, which is diagonal from the house and pretty close to the front porch. This thing stops and it turns its head and it looks directly at them. And he said that its eyes almost glowed, this piercing sulfur yellow, and its pupils were jagged and like a deep black glass. And then surrounding its pupils was a white light ring that almost made it look too human. He said there was a terrifyingly calm intelligence behind its eyes. It was almost as though it had its mind weighing on something, and then a final decision had been made. Okay, this part is so weird. So he says he barely could breathe. He didn't move at all. He said he made a promise to the shadows that if it allowed him to make it to the door, they'd leave the night to whatever it was. Very cryptic. So he stands up slowly, never broke eye contact, slowly backed away towards the house, one step at a time. Said every step felt like it was moving through water, and then his hand hit the handle. He fumbled with it, and then he got inside. He quickly locked the door, knowing full well that that little pane of glass would not hold anything back if it really wanted to get in. He said he stared out the window and he watched this thing drift towards the edge of the woods. Now get this, this really intrigues me. This thing didn't run or hide. It just, as it moved, started to fade out of existence. He describes it as going from solid muscle to gray smudge and then vanishing into thin air. So a little while later, their friend finally showed up and he's banging on the door to be let in. And when he got inside, he found his friend just white as a ghost, zoning out. His friend definitely believed him too, because strange things always happened in those hills. But it doesn't stop there. The real chill for him, he said, happened a while later. So long after he had settled down, he heard a voice that he describes as gravelly and low. And it was calling his name from the pitch black yard. He said it was beckoning him to come back outside and finish the conversation that they had started. Like, what the heck even is this? Okay, so obviously he is not getting up and going outside. And when he doesn't answer, he hears a sound. It was a slow and deliberate sound of something dragging across the siding just outside of the bedroom wall. It went from one end to the other. It was a high-pitched, metallic screeching sound. So they didn't get much sleep that night. And then the next morning, they went outside to investigate, and there was absolutely no trace of this thing except for scratch marks across the entire side of the house. What the heck are we considering this thing? Are we going with Dogman? Are we going with a werewolf? I have never heard of a creature like this that vanished into thin air like they usually leap into the darkness or the forest. Also, doesn't usually speak. So this might not even be something dog-like. Maybe it's a demon disguised as a dogman or a werewolf. I don't know. My mind is blown. Again, I always say this. I think I've heard it all, and then something comes at me that's completely out of left field. So drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to know what you guys think. And if you have your own creepy story, I gotta hear it. And if you're new here, you gotta follow for more creepy story time.
We are back with another Trini Paranormal, Trini Scary Story, Trini Folklore for you today. And it seems as though a lot of people have had paranormal experiences in the workplace. It doesn't matter if it's a grocery, if it's a factory, if it's a plant in the industry. It all seems to have really weird paranormal experiences. And this paranormal experience happened in a grocery and it was very terrifying. So I will not be naming the grocery because I don't want to get sued. But this is what our follower said. Hey, good day. I have a story to share with you. A personal experience. This happened around 18 years ago. I was in my 7th month of pregnancy working as a merchandiser. I was merchandising at a particular supermarket about a few months prior. Now, there were 3 levels of stockroom, and I had products for all 3. Every time you would go to the 3rd level, you would always get an eerie feeling. My co-worker knew this and said not to go up the 3rd floor alone. I had to do some stock check ASAP on my co-worker's day off. I went up the stairs and the lights started to flicker. Not a soul up there but me. I started checking. All of a sudden, I heard items falling from pallets as though someone was throwing it. It was way down the aisle. But I heard it and I saw it. I said, "Is anyone up here? Stop playing, it's not funny." Now I heard and saw things being thrown. I got scared. All of a sudden, I swear on my life, I heard and saw something run across fast. I heard its footsteps and saw a blurred version of it. I dropped pen, book, and ran down the stairs as fast as I could. I was shaking with fright. About 2 hours after, I was talking to a worker from that supermarket. He gave me a weird look when I told him my encounter. He said, "Something living up there, girl. How you think people don't really go up there, and especially alone? But don't say I say so." He then said, "It's a buck up there. Don't ever go up there again." I wanted to pee my pants. Up to this day, I will never forget the experience. Hope you like my true story. I got the name of the supermarket, but again, I would not be able to name it because I don't want to get sued. So in Trinidad, there seem to be a lot of stories circulating about big businesses that may have what we in Trinidad call a buck. But let me know, have you all ever, especially merchandisers, or people who work in those groceries that supposedly have bucks, do you or have you ever had that experience with working in the supermarket? Let me know.
Hey everyone, sorry I have been missing for like the past week and a half. I had some not so good things happen to me and it's really been sucking, and I am moving this weekend. I just have a lot going on. I'm very depressed, but something creepy did happen to me. Okay, so I've made a video previously on how I'm pretty sure that my property, actually I'm positive my property is haunted. So it's probably a good thing I'm getting off this property. My family has owned this property for 15, almost 16 years. We've had a lot of weird shit happen out here. And now it's just me and my boyfriend on the property. But the other day, whenever he was at work, I was sitting on the couch and it was like the afternoon. So it was still daytime, but the sun was setting. And on our back door, we have a doggy door. And the little flap is broken, so like I can kind of hear things that go on outside. Regardless, I'm sitting on the couch just watching TV waiting for my boyfriend to get home. And I shit you not, I hear a woman's voice say, "Hello?" Girl, as if I'm not already going through a hard time. So I get up to go investigate. Like maybe somebody's in my backyard, I have no freaking idea. Nobody is there. We live in the country. Neighbors are super far. There's no way I would hear my neighbors talking, especially from inside the house sitting on the couch. And of course, I paused the TV and I rewound it because I was like, maybe that was something on the TV that I heard. Nothing. There was no hello on the TV or anything that could have sounded like that. So yesterday, my boyfriend leaves to go get us food. Again, I'm sitting on the couch and I hear a woman's voice say, "Hello?" At this point, I just started talking to her, okay? Because I'm going through a really hard time right now. She probably knows what hard times are like. I don't know. Maybe she's trying to comfort me in this. It doesn't seem evil. Nothing scary has happened. So, I don't know. But a lot of bad things have happened on this property. My family is a mess. So I know there's a lot of dark energy here. I think there was dark energy before. I've told y'all before whenever we moved in that there was a pet cemetery in our backyard. And it's actually still there because I don't want to disrupt anything. And also I feel like that's disrespectful. We've literally left this pet cemetery there for like 15, 16 years. But also whenever we moved in, there was a tree house already built like in the back, close to the pet cemetery, very close. And there's like a circle of trees that went around this pet cemetery. And in the center was a white candle. Yeah. So that's what's been going on. And also one time my brother, he had like this friend come over whenever my brother and my mom were still living here, and him and his dad apparently like were mediums, psychic mediums or whatever, were able to speak to the other side. And both the father and son came to our property and said that there was a witch on our property. So I don't really know what that means, but hopefully the next property we move to is not haunted because it's like 450 acres. But now that I say that out loud, it's probably definitely going to have some activity, and I will keep y'all posted.
And I promise I will go back to posting soon. I just am dealing with a lot right now. And thank you for all of the messages. I don't have the emotional capacity to go read through all of them and reply, and I'm so sorry. But whenever I am moved and settled in, hopefully this weekend I will feel better and be able to reply to all of you and get back to posting. And if this woman visits me again before I leave and says hello, I will let y'all know.
There's been a lot of creepy stuff that has been happening in Texas over the past couple of years. There was this woman named Deborah. Deborah was from a place just north of San Antonio, and she lived with her husband and daughter. Well, one night she was coming home late from the store, and she pulls into her driveway. She gets out of her car, and she starts unloading groceries out of the trunk. All of a sudden, she starts to hear a rustling sound behind her. And out of these woods that were across the street from her house, she sees 3 children walk out. They are dressed in all black, and they look sort of out of place. They proceed to walk up to her, and they have sort of this soft spoken voice. Ma'am, can we play with your daughter? Can we come inside and hang out with your daughter? And she's like, who are you? Like, where did you come from? They don't say anything. She goes, look, my daughter is like asleep, and you know, it's late at night. Like, what are you guys doing out? Where are your parents? They don't respond to that. They just keep asking her, can we come inside and play with your daughter? So she's like, look, no, you cannot. Like, I don't know who you are. It's late at night. Like, you need to go back home. But they kept on, like, taunting her, saying, you know, let us play with your daughter. And as she kept telling them no, they became more and more aggressive. So they started to yell insults, and they started cussing her out. And she runs inside and gets her husband. Her husband comes out there thinking, you know, like, who are these kids? When he gets outside, there's no one out there. So he comes in and he tells his wife, like, are you sure you've seen kids out there? Because it's just completely quiet. There's no one out there. But she's insistent that these kids were harassing her, asking to play with their daughter. So after a few weeks, she kind of forgets about all this. And she's at home one day. Her daughter's in the bedroom. And she overhears her daughter, like, laughing and giggling like she's hanging out with someone in her bedroom. But she knows that it's just her and her daughter. So she calls for her daughter. And when her daughter comes to the living room, she asks, you know, hey, like, what's going on in your room? Like, is there someone here? Like, why are you laughing and like giggling like you're playing with someone? And she goes, oh, mommy, like, my new friends, I invited them in and they came into my room and we're playing. She goes, what new friends? And she goes, I met them. They came from the woods across the street. And so instantly the mom's like, stay here. She runs to the bedroom. And when she opens the door, there's no one there. So she goes back to her daughter and says, who are these kids? Like, you know, where did they go? She goes, Mom, I don't know. They were in my room. She goes, I've been playing with them for the past couple of weeks. And so the mom is just like floored. Like, did she invite these kids that I seen outside in the house? So she tells her daughter, you are not to hang out with them anymore until I talk to their parents and figure out like what's going on and talk to them about how they were harassing me. So the daughter agrees and she goes back to her bedroom. And so she leaves her house and she goes around to some of the neighbors and she starts asking them, like, do you know anything about these kids? And none of the neighbors know who these people are. And so she comes back to her house. And when she gets back to her house, it's now dark. She sees her daughter next to the woods across the street. So she immediately runs over to her. What are you doing? Like, why are you out of the house? She goes, oh, mommy, I'm going to play with the kids that were in my room. They told me to come in the woods. And so she tells her, no, you get in the house now. So she brings her in the house. And over the next couple of weeks, she keeps, you know, hearing about these imaginary friends that she can't see that this girl's playing with, but she never like sees them again. And then one day they were driving and they were in this terrible accident and the daughter got hurt really bad. So did the mother. And Deborah attributed that to this encounter she had with these strange children. Most terrifying thing in the woods are humans. You know, when you go out into the woods, sometimes you will encounter people who are up to no good. You will run into marinara farms. You will run into unalivers. You will run into feral people. Believe it or not, the hills have eyes, deliverance, all of that stuff really does happen deep in the woods, out in the desert, right? Now, there was this man named Ron. Ron was from West Virginia. And he said one weekend, him and his buddies decided they were going to do some dispersed camping up in the George Washington National Forest. So he said him and his friends, they packed up their car and they headed out. Well, as they get closer to George Washington National Forest, he said they were driving down this road that was basically just cut through really thick forest. And as he's driving, he notices this car started to follow him. And at the time, Ron thinks, oh, this must be a police officer. So he pulls his vehicle over to the side of the road. And sure enough, this car pulls over to the side of the road. And he said this guy got out of the car. He had this nice button-up dress shirt, he had these black dress pants on, and these cowboy boots. And he said this guy just walked to the driver's side window. So Ron rolled down his window, and this guy said, where are y'all headed off to? And he goes on to say, well, we're going camping up here in George Washington National Forest. And the guy goes, oh, okay, well, where at up here? And he goes, well, about 10 miles up and, close to this area. The guy goes, I need you to be more exact. I want you to tell me exactly where you are camping at, the exact spot. So he proceeds to tell him the exact location. And then this guy looks at him and says, well, that's very deep in the woods. And a lot of people go missing in that area. And if something were to happen to you, there would be no one to rescue you. And Ron's just kind of like, yeah, we know that. And he goes, okay, well, you all be safe now. And he taps the side of the car and he walks away. And he gets back in his car and he drives off. So Ron was kind of like, okay, that's weird. What was all that about? They forget about it and they finally make it to their campsite. Well, that night it rained, it was hot, it was humid, and there were lots of bugs. So in the middle of the night, Ron and his friends decide we're going to abandon the campsite and we're just going to sleep in our cars tonight. So they go back to the car and they end up getting situated. And Ron remembers, wait a second, I forgot my phone in the tent. So he asked his friends, will you guys come back with me so I get my phone? And none of them wanted to go. So he sets off on his own and he heads back to this campsite. As he's walking through the woods and he gets really close to where he could kind of see the campsite off in the distance, he sees a set of lights. And he notices there are 3 men walking around the tents. So he moves up a little closer to get a better view. And he can see one of the guys is the same guy that pulled him over in the car. And they have these big, garbage bags with them. He said he then watched them grab stuff out of the garbage bag and start throwing it on top of the tents. And he couldn't figure out what they were doing, but he knew something was off. And all of a sudden, he takes a step backwards, he breaks a branch, and instantly these 3 men are alerted to him. So he takes off running, he runs all the way back to his car, and he tells his friends, just get out of there. And they end up leaving and everything is fine. But in his mind, he couldn't help but think, how many other people, went camping and this guy stopped him and maybe something happened to them. Have you ever had one of those moments where you peek out of the corner of your eye and for a brief second you think you see a shadowy figure or a face looking at you from behind the doorway or the closet or the window, right? Believe it or not, this is one of the most common paranormal experiences that people have. And a lot of people wonder, why does this happen? And what exactly is this? Now, you have to understand, a lot of the things that I talk about, they feed off fear. So this almost playing peekaboo, hiding and briefly showing itself, makes you more terrified, gets you afraid, and they feed off that. So this continuous pattern of thinking, is this real? What is that? Did I just see something? Right? That gets you more emotionally unbalanced, afraid, and it feeds off that. And also, you notice when you watch these scary movies, it tends to happen more often, right? That's because you're getting afraid from the movie, and it's feeding off of that. And it's also using that as a catalyst to induce more fear. Now, as far as what these things exactly are, some people think they are some type of demonic entity. Some people think they are interdimensional beings. I've even heard people describe them as being extraterrestrial. But one thing's for certain is that they feed off fear. So what do you think? What are these things? And have you ever had an experience?
Have you ever heard of Louise Porton? Louise was a 23-year-old mother to Lexi and Scarlett. Lexi was 3 and Scarlett was 1.5 years. Louise was trying to be a model in England, but tragedy hit on January 15th of 2018 when Louise found Lexi on her bed unresponsive. But she didn't call 911 right away. She said she was making sure that Lexi was dead. Just 17 days later, Scarlett also got sick. Louise started taking her to the hospital, but would pull over and call for an ambulance. Since the deaths happened so close together, the police in Warwickshire started investigating. It didn't take long for Louise to become their suspect. Louise had Googled things like, how long does it take for body parts to start getting cold? And while she was at the funeral preparing for her daughter's deaths, she was seen FaceTiming men and laughing. After an autopsy, it was found that both girls died by deliberate airway obstructions. They had been strangled. She denied the accusations, but people who knew her said that the girls were a burden to Louise. She felt like the girls were getting in the way of her sex life and of her modeling career. Her landlord, who would often watch the girls, said that she would do anything to not have them around her. A few days before Lexi's death, she was put in the hospital twice. Instead of caring for her daughter, she was seen taking explicit photos and FaceTiming other men. Louise was charged with both the murder of Lexi and Scarlett and sentenced to life in prison. I just don't understand how a parent could murder their child. What are your thoughts? Leave them in the comments and follow for more true crime. Have you ever heard of the girl who solved her own kidnapping? Joy White and Carl Tyson were extremely excited to start a family. They were overjoyed when Carolina was born on July 15th of 1987. When Carlina was just 19 days old, she fell ill with an infection that landed her in the hospital. Anne Petway was dressing as a nurse and loitering around the hospital. She would simply scoop Carlina up and walk out of the hospital with her. Carlina wouldn't be seen again for 23 years. When Carlina was 18 years old, she found out she was expecting her first child. She asked Anne for her birth records so she could get on health insurance. Anne was hesitant to give her anything, so she went to the Bureau of Vital Statistics to see what she could find. The clerk in the office couldn't find any of her birth records and accused her of trying to obtain a false identity. She questioned Anne about this, and she was just told that her parents had abandoned her at birth, and she didn't give her much more information. Not completely convinced, Carlina started researching abductions in her area. In 2010, Carlina was living in Atlanta. She was 23 years old when she found a missing baby that looked an awful lot like her own daughter. She reached out to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, and she was soon put in contact with her family. DNA tests came back that she was in fact their missing daughter. Anne turned herself in 2011. She told police she was desperate for a child as she had had multiple miscarriages. She was charged with kidnapping and sentenced to 12 years. So what do you think? Was it enough time? Let me know in the comments and follow for more true crime. Have you ever heard of Banff Spring Hotels located in Banff, Alberta, Canada? The hotel first opened in 1888. It was designed by Bruce Price and it was first opened by the Canadian Pacific Railway. Another structure was added in 1914, and in 1926 a fire destroyed most of the hotel. The replacement was completed in 1928. It is currently operated by Fairmont Hotel and Resorts. This hotel is so haunted that they apparently had to close up an entire room. There is a story about a bride who tripped and fell down a flight of stairs after tripping on her skirt. Now she dances through the ballroom. And Sam the Bellman is said to be cheery and helpful. He can often be mistaken for a real person. And then there's the legend of room 873. It is said that the room was boarded up because people kept calling about being terrorized in the middle of the night. So I actually called the hotel to see if room 873 was boarded up, and the room doesn't exist. But could the place still be haunted? You can stay the night, but rates start at $1,300 for one night. Would you stay to find out if it's haunted? Let me know in the comments and follow for more ghost stories. On the weekend of June 22nd of 2007, pro wrestler Chris Benoit murdered his wife Nancy and their 7-year-old son Daniel before unaliving himself in his home gym. They believe that Chris suffered from a chronic condition that many athletes who play contact sports suffer from. If they receive several concussions, it can leave them with brain damage. This increases their risk of depression and cognitive impairment. Seems pretty cut and dry, but things have came out that made people believe that Chris may have been framed. 14 hours before the bodies were found, Chris's Wikipedia page was changed to say that his wife Nancy had died. While the poster has gone on to say that it was just an eerie coincidence, it seems awfully coincidental. Chavo Guerrero was on the phone with Chris the day before the murders happened. He said while they were on the phone, there was a banging at the door. When Chris called him back later, he sounded afraid and he told Chavo that he loved him. Other people in the WWE also got this phone call. They said Chris sounded afraid. And there's also the fact that Chris's phone was used after his reported time of death. Kevin Sullivan, who was another professional wrestler, was an ex of Chris's wife Nancy. He was extremely angry that Chris had stolen Nancy and he vowed revenge. Kevin's ex-girlfriend Sherry Martel was also found dead that same weekend. And the murders happened exactly 7 years after Nancy left Kevin. So do you think it's all just a coincidence, or could there be more to the story? Let me know in the comments and follow for more true crime.
Want to get creeped out? A Chicago couple reported a large, thin man appearing out of Schiller Woods. This couple was actually performing a small Wiccan ritual in the woods on Sunday, December 23rd. The female was a 27-year-old and her boyfriend was 28. They were both from nearby River Grove, Illinois, and had been practicing Wicca for about 4 years. They had visited Schiller Woods multiple times for rituals and were familiar with other practicing groups there. They chose the location because they could practice in peace without disturbance. Specifically, they were doing a Yule ritual for prosperity. We should have done that. When they were almost finished with the ritual, they heard a very high-pitched sound from nowhere. Looking up, they saw a large, thin man appear out of the woods, about 7.5 to 8 feet tall, same height as what that girl said she saw. Yeah. Kel. The man was extremely thin, about half the size of the boyfriend in width. Oh, wow. His arms hung down towards his knees. Ugh. Little long limb. The long limbs. We always talk about the long limbs. That's so creepy. Initially, the female thought, holy shit, it's Slender Man. Yeah. But realized that it didn't actually resemble any man she had ever seen. The being's eyes were huge, jet black, and insect-like, similar to a praying mantis's eyes. Alien. The being appeared to be wearing gray overalls or a gray jumpsuit. Okay. He seemed to be holding a wand or stick in his right hand. A wizard. His head was smooth, no hair. Alien. And again, his arms were really long, hanging just above the knees, and possibly usually tipped with claws.
Ooh,
so
claws.
creepy. Oh, it's so creepy. I love it. The being didn't approach the witnesses aggressively. It remained behind a row of trees about 15 yards from them, and it seemed aware that the witnesses could see it. They said the encounter lasted over a full minute, which, like, you know, sometimes this sounds so short, but it's so long.
That is a long time to, like, see something like scary.
Eventually, the being stepped behind the trees and just disappeared. They quickly gathered their things and they felt an overwhelming urgency to leave. They got in their car and they left Schiller Woods. While they were leaving, the female witness noted that there was a complete lack of wildlife while leaving the woods. Like, usually in that area at that time of day, there would be deer, raccoons, lots of them, but there was none. They do say that both of them had smoked a little marijuana as part of their ritual, but they were sober and clear-headed during the sighting. They insist that the marijuana did not influence the encounter, and I believe them.
Yeah, like
1,000,000% I believe them.
Yes, me too.
And people who don't believe them probably never smoked weed in their life.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
I would maybe be a bit more skeptical if they told me, we dropped some acid before we went in there. Then I'd be like, all right, man. Like,
exactly.
Maybe,
if they had done psychedelics, sure.
Yeah, I'm sure I can.
But you smoked a little marijuana?
You're not both seeing the same fake thing. No.
That being said, they don't feel like there was any immediate danger during the sighting. At the time that they shared this story, we're planning to return to the woods for rituals in the future. Schiller Woods is also just over a dozen miles west of Lake Michigan and bordered by Rosemont and O'Hare International Airport. These are locations where there have been a lot of Mothman sightings.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true.
I have one for y'all. I haven't shared this one yet because it really freaks me out. Same as the other 100 stories I have stored up in my noggin that I just haven't been able to bring myself to talk about on here yet. Back in like 2012, I was still in high school and I had an older friend who was a stay-at-home mom who had 4 kids. She was my best friend at the time. I spent a lot of time at her house helping her with her kids, helping her clean her house, just hanging out, having fun. She lived in this old white farmhouse out in the middle of the woods. And yes, we do live in the Appalachian Mountains. But the house always gave me the creeps. One day when my mom took me and dropped me off there, she was like, hey, my best friend used to live in this house. She said, has she experienced anything paranormal yet? And she went on to tell me that one night her best friend was asleep in that house. She too was a mother. And so her bedroom was where my friend's little boy's bedroom was. So as she was sleeping one night, she was there alone and her husband was not home. She woke up to the covers being ripped off of her in the middle of the night. So of course she freaked out and she packed her bags immediately and moved out. She got herself and her kids out of the house that night and never went back. So of course I shared this knowledge with my then best friend. And I was like, has anything crazy like that happened to you here? And she said, no, we haven't really noticed anything at all. I don't know if me talking about it just made things start happening again or if she just started noticing after that. But that very night we were sitting there talking and we heard a Christmas bear going off in the attic. Like, she used the attic for storage. And she had a stuffed animal bear up there and it played Christmas music if you squeezed its hand. So we're sitting there in this creepy old silent house. I'm sorry, I'm shaking. I'm freaked out. Just talking about it still really scares me. But we hear the Christmas music coming from the attic and we're like, what the hell? So she has her husband go and check it out and nothing's up there, but yeah, the Christmas bear was playing music. So after that, stuff just really started popping off. Walking past her little boy's room just gave you like the worst vibe ever. There were times we would be sitting in the living room, which was like on the other side of the wall to the little boy's room, when none of the kids were home. And you'd hear like their fire trucks making noise and playing music and being thrown across the room or rolled across the floor. And remember, that was the room that my mom's best friend had lived in and the blankets got ripped off of her in the middle of the night. One day we were sitting in her bed folding clothes. We were going through stuff, so she had a bunch of stuff sitting on her dresser. I mean, it was like piled up with stuff. We're sitting there talking, laughing, and all of a sudden every single item that is on that dresser gets thrown across the room. So hard that things were broken. That moment right there was probably one of the scariest things I think I've ever experienced. Whatever it was had a lot of force. And although they never noticed anything paranormal before I brought it up, I think it's worth mentioning that at one point in time, her and her boys decided to switch bedrooms. During the 2 weeks that they had switched bedrooms, my friend completely lost her mind and had to go check herself into an insane asylum because she wanted to end her life. When she got back home, they switched back bedrooms and she was fine. I truly think whatever demonic energy was in that room was just like preying on her and draining like all of her energy or something. I don't know. Yeah, I have so many other stories like that. If y'all are interested in hearing them, let me know.
My cat started staring into the hallway every single night around 4 a.m. She would sit completely frozen outside of my bedroom door, just staring with her ears pointed, and it was like she was listening to someone or something. First, I just thought it was normal cat behavior. I mean, there's a theory where animals do see spiritual beings, even when we don't. And so I wasn't worried too much about it. However, then she started to hiss every single night. It was always at the same spot in the hallway, and it was like she would walk up and she would stop in the same spot, and her eyes would go up like she was staring at something tall, and then she would go back and hiss. Now, I live alone, so eventually this started to get to me and freak me out. There was one night where I didn't just hear her hiss, but I heard her make a noise that I've never heard her make before. It was almost like a scream in cat form, and I opened up my door and she was crouched extremely low to the floor, looking up. She was staring directly into the dark hallway, and the apartment was completely silent. And then you could hear a slight, creak in the floorboards, like something was shifting its weight, but I wasn't moving and my cat wasn't moving. My cat's eyes started to track something, like she was watching it move down the hallway, and it was coming towards me, and I just watched her eyes follow it. Suddenly she puffed up and she bolted to underneath my bed. She bolted so hard she actually slapped into my bed frame. I got freaked out, so I closed the door and I locked it even though nothing was there. Obviously there was some kind of presence, and she stayed underneath my bed the entire night, and I barely slept. The next evening comes around and my cat is in the same place in the hallway. This time is different though. She's not hissing or scared. She actually looks more relaxed, a little bit more curious of the area. And as I'm watching her, I see her eyes again look up like something much taller than her. And she actually starts to purr this time. A second later, I felt something brush past my shoulder, and it was enough where my hair actually kind of blew. Like there was definitely something that went past me, like squeezing by, and my cat actually got up and followed whatever it was. Obviously, I couldn't see anything, and she followed it into the dark into the bathroom. After that experience, I haven't seen her do it since. It's like whatever it was finally left. But she does sometimes still sleep right outside of my bedroom door, almost like she's waiting for something to come back.
Have you guys seen this lady's story time? I'm gonna call her Naya. In her story time, she says she was almost forced to sell her soul in Hollywood. So she had moved to LA about a year prior, and she came across this opportunity on Instagram. It basically seemed like a networking type of thing. Basically think like a talent agency. It's basically targeting actors, musicians, artists, and they're basically promising to develop the artist. And again, she just moved there. She's trying to get into the groove of LA, so she signs up. So she signs up and she goes to this building, which she didn't want to say the name of the building for legal purposes, but I went through the comments and some people may have pinpointed what building it was, allegedly. And based on the description, many people speculated that it could possibly be Chateau Marmont, the Chateau Marmont in LA, and a lot of people believe that it's demonic based off of some experiences that people have there. It's a place that for some reason the elites are known to go to. She gets to the hotel and it's basically a mixture of so many different things. It looks like a mansion, a hotel, a church, like all in. So she gets there and this old white man with a bald head comes outside to get her and says, "Oh, you here for such and such?" She's thinking she's there for a music event, and y'all, why it's a cult? So she gets there and she's listening to some of the rhetorics, and some of them she agrees with, taking what she can and leaving what she doesn't want. And mind you, she's new to LA, so she's basically just trying to get in. So she keeps going and winds up getting a mentor at this place. So one day she says she has a meeting with what she refers to as a handler, but I'm gonna say maybe her mentor. And keep in mind, these people are celebrities, people that are in the industry. She's basically sitting down with one of them, having a meeting, talking about her career, her expansion, and where she wants to go. They were trying to get her to go into this meeting with somebody. A handler of hers tells her, "Hey, so you've been coming for a few months now. Are you ready to have this meeting?" And Naya's hesitant. She's like, nah. Lady touches her shoulder and says, "You're gonna have the meeting." So she gets pressured into having this meeting. They bring her into the room where the president of this company, they're telling her that they've been trying to help her and they need her to take these classes. And she's giving him very valid reasons as to why she couldn't take this course, like financial issues. And it's like every excuse that she gave, they gave her a solution, including them full on offering to pay for the course. At this point, she's starting to feel forced. So she says, "I feel like y'all are forcing me to do this, which is why I don't want to do it." They tell her like, "Well, yeah, we're forcing you. And the man goes on to tell her that they really want to help her. They really want to do this for her. And most people who don't take their advice, one way or another, ends up dead. She's like, well, how do they end up dead? And he says, basically, they OD. Gulp. At this point, it's pretty late and she's scared and she doesn't want these people to harm her. She felt like there would be consequences to saying no. So she agrees to sign up for a class and then she left and never came back. Mind you, this happened October of last year and the harassment from this company recently stopped, like about a month ago. They would call her partner to get him to convince her to go, calling her from different numbers, truly stalking and harassment. She said she doesn't know what they wanted with her so bad, but everything that people have been saying about the industry is real. It's Holly weird, but thank God she's divinely protected. If you guys want the full story, go ahead and check out her page. I'm gonna have her link down below. And check out her music while you're at it. She's really good.
I need to tell you guys this ghost story. This story was sent to my email, and if you have any ghost stories, paranormal encounters, or scary stories that you want to share, you can send them to the email in my bio. Something was at the foot of my bed 30 years ago. This is my mother's story, and it all happened in the early 1990s, when she was still a teenager. The weather outside was dark and gray and cold, and although the houses were decked in soft, glowing Christmas lights, something still felt unjolly. It was Christmas Eve, and my mother shared a bedroom with her younger sister, who at the time was around 14 years old. Their room was at the end of a hallway, and it was small and crammed, and they shared a bed that was pushed up against a wall in the corner of the room. Because the room was so small, they always noted how dark it would get in there. A different sort of dark than in the other part of the house. It felt impenetrable, and the only source of light was a small digital alarm clock that sat on a small nightstand that would emit just enough light for your eyes to make out shapes in the dark. Now, this night, everyone in the house had already gone to bed. The excitement of Christmas morning had actually turned into an early night of brushing teeth, tucking in, and drifting off, and so the home found itself to be completely quiet. Not a creature was stirring, no traffic, no noise, no soft murmurs of a conversation or padding feet headed towards the bathroom. At some point in the middle of the night, my mom found herself quickly woken. She was confused because what had woken her was a sound, or she was 50% sure that it was a sound. Sometimes we have dreams where we
might have known the story of real life boogeyman.
Where we heard something and it wakes us, but this was a new sound, a different sound than she was used to. It was a wet, choking sound, almost animal-like, repetitive and heaving and aggressive. Her first instinct was to point the blame on the family dog, but she remembered that the dog wasn't allowed to sleep in their bedroom, and so that logic just didn't make sense because this sound was close, coming from the foot of their bed close. She stayed completely still, trying to rationalize, calm her breathing, and listening. Gag, heave, gargle. Gag, heave, gargle, like something was struggling to breathe. And she said the longer that she listened, the more distorted the sound became. It didn't sound human, or even animal-like, she realized. But now her eyes had started adjusting to the faint blue glow from the clock, and that's when she noticed it. A shape at the foot of her bed. She swore at first it must have just been a shadow, but then it moved. She said it was a massive black figure, darker than the room around it somehow, like a towering mass of shadow standing over the bed. It was so large that, assuming this thing had a head, it was brushing up against the ceiling. My mom said that the second it shifted, every hair on her body stood up, because when it moved, there was this terrible scraping sound, like metal being dragged across gravel, slow and sharp. And if all of this wasn't bad enough, then came the voices. To this day, my mom cannot fully explain what she heard coming from that thing. She said it sounded like dozens of voices layered together, men and women and maybe even children, and they were all speaking at once. She couldn't discern what any of them were saying, but it sounded as if they were speaking backwards, like an old cassette tape rewinding while people whispered through it. At that point, she was too scared to even breathe, but she quickly realized that one of her feet was sticking slightly out from under the blanket at the end of the bed. And this thing, it was slowly moving towards it. The closer it got, the colder the room became. Kind of
cold that burns your skin, like all the heat was being sucked out of the room. Closer and closer the mask crept, and the scraping sound grew louder and louder with every movement. All she could think of was, if this thing notices I'm awake, something bad is going to happen. So, as slowly and carefully as she could, she started pulling her foot back under the blanket, inch by inch, terrified that the mattress would move, a spring would squeak, or the bed frame would groan, and the thing would notice. Somehow, right before the shadow reached the edge of the bed, she was able to get her foot back under the covers, and it passed right by, seemingly not having noticed anything at all. Still making that awful scraping sound, though, still whispering in those backwards voices, and it crossed the room. It never once looked directly at her. When the shadow reached the corner of the room, without slowing down, it went straight into the wall. And then it was gone. Instantly, the voices stopped. The scraping sound stopped. The room went silent. My mom just laid there, frozen, staring into the darkness, trying to process what exactly had just happened. Then, from beside her, she heard a small whisper. "Are you awake?" her little sister. My mom said that hearing her speak almost made her cry from relief, because until that moment she thought she might have imagined the entire thing. She whispered back, "Yeah." And after a few seconds of silence, her sister quietly said, "What the fuck was that?" In that moment, all they wanted more than anything else was for the light to be on. But the light switch was across the room, right beside the bedroom door, on the same wall that the thing had just passed through. My mom said they sat there for almost a full minute, arguing in whispers about who was going to get up to flip on the light switch, and finally, under the argument that she was the older one and so it should be her, my mom built up enough courage to cross the small bedroom. She threw the blankets off, jumped out of bed, smacked the light switch on, and dove back onto the bed before even looking behind her. The room was empty. Nothing there. No marks on the carpet, no echoing, scraping sounds, no sign that anything had been there at all. Unfortunately, that night wasn't the end of it. Strange things in the house started happening. Footsteps in empty rooms, voices from around corners, things moving on their own, and even after the family moved houses, it followed them for over 20 years. And even to this day, she's terrified she'll wake up one night and hear that scraping sound again.
A couple of years ago, my great aunt, whom we'll call Luz, passed away in Tijuana, Baja California. Close family members say she passed away on the night of her exorcism. Before she passed, she had been acting strangely, strange enough that the close family thought a priest should see her. When the priest met with her, he said she needed an exorcism as soon as possible. The exorcism was scheduled to happen 3 days later, as it was a Friday. The next day, her estranged sister, we'll call her Sofia, went to visit her. As Sofia reached the door of Luz's house, she had an eerie feeling. While speaking to Luz, Sofia felt like she was talking to a completely different person. Even her voice was different. When she went to the restroom, Sofia saw what appeared to be objects associated with witchcraft or ritual practices. Nonetheless, she stayed for a while, planning to help her sister and young nieces with anything that arose given Luz's condition. As Sofia helped clean around the house, Luz's daughters warned her to not go into a certain room. She believed the reason was that there was more witchcraft going on in there. Oddly enough, she began to feel a dark presence pushing her back when walking by that room door. Upon returning to the room with Luz, Sofia witnessed Luz speaking in tongues and repeatedly poking her finger deep into her nose. The bleeding didn't stop her, which we later found out by the priest that she was repeating a demon's name. After uttering phrases that were not understandable, she finished her sentences with the word maestro. During her funeral, strange things occurred. Many people forgot their prayers midway, and in the chapel, an unexplainable cold and darkness filled the air. There were many people who attended that were unaware of the series of events before her death. Curiously, most people congregated outside the chapel. Few stayed inside with her body for long. As my grandpa was driving home from the viewing, he was praying for Luz's soul, and suddenly all the lights on his car's dashboard flickered, and items in the back of his car flew to the other side. That night, at my grandma's house, my uncle woke up randomly at the same time as me, around 3 in the morning, and as he went to get it, the noise from the water gallon woke my grandma up. She was in her room with the door open and could see us from her bed. That's when we all witnessed the same thing. We saw a tall, dark figure floating outside the window. Keep in mind, we were on the 2nd story. My grandma and uncle didn't want me to be scared, so they assured me it was nothing and told me to go back to bed. We told other family members about what we saw, and we knew it couldn't have been one of our shadows due to the lack of light to cast a shadow. Upon returning home, we shared all the creepy events with my aunt, who couldn't attend the services. As we were speaking, the lights went out, a phenomenon that had never occurred before. To this day, whenever we talk about Luz, weird things happen.
If you're a true crime and paranormal buff that has $247,000 laying around, you too can rent out a piece of Beverly Hills estate that is connected to the Manson family and the location of one of the most horrific Hollywood crimes. So if you're a paranormal investigator with great credit and unresolved trauma who likes to wear shark tooth necklaces, then this is the right place for you. For $247,000, I'm sorry, hold on. For $50 million, if you have that cash laying around, you can actually own this mega mansion that actually belongs to Jeff Franklin, who is the mastermind behind sitcoms like Full House and even Malcolm in the Middle and so much more. Jeff's house that resides off of 10066 Cielo Drive didn't always look like this. It was actually 10050 Cielo Drive, and this was a house that was once lived in by Roman Polanski and famous actress Sharon Tate, who unfortunately be a part of one of the most gruesome crimes in Hollywood history in 1969. The slaying was actually carried out by members of the Manson family following orders by their leader, Charles Manson. Fast forward to the early 2000s, Jeff Franklin actually purchases the house and demolishes everything. According to past interviews, Jeff stated that when he bought the property, he wanted every piece of detail and remnants of that house to be demolished. To every single blade of grass that resided on that property, everything needed to go, so he could build his mega mansion to house his mega car collection and some risque Hollywood parties. I have an acquaintance that lives down the street, and the stories I would hear about his parties. For reason, Jeff decided to put his house on the market for a cool $85 million. Then he realized, wait, that's a little too high. I'm gonna knock it down to $50 million. And he's wondering why the house is not budging. It's not moving. There's no buyers. There's no people who are interested in buying the property. So people are claiming that it's cursed. That it's cursed. I don't think it's cursed, considering that, yes, what happened there in the past. However, I believe that there is a creative, creepy vibe. You see, I really don't believe that this place is cursed, considering one of the best albums out there was produced and created on that property in that house, and that was Downward Spiraled by 9 Inch Nails. I guess the biggest question is, if you had $247,000 laying around, would you rent this place for an entire month? Let me know in the comments, and always remember to stay haunted and weird.